All the publicity surrounding Sony's controversial comedy, The Interview, about the assassination of the leader of North Korea seems to have worked out pretty well financially for the movie. It made $18 million in its opening weekend. The vast majority of that, $15 million, was online, making it Sony's #1 online movie of all time. Paul Dergarabedian is the senior media analyst at Rentrak. He joins me from Los Angeles with more. Nice to see you as always, Paul.
Great to be here, Bobby. Thank you.
All right, you're pretty impressed by these numbers. What exactly happened here?
Well, I think what happened was this movie that was originally supposed to be a wide release film in theaters, Sony had to shift the playbook and turn it into a much more modest release in theaters, but had it expand hugely online. And $15 million for the weekend, really since the day before Christmas when it was available online through the weekend, $15 million. Theatrically, in the brick and mortar movie theaters, it earned $1 million on Christmas Day alone and earned another $1.8 million for the weekend. So about $3 million from the theatrical, $15 million from the online, so about $18 million total.
And the irony is this is really about how it was expected to do anyway. The movie got kind of a range of reviews in terms of the actual movie, but this really became about more than the movie.
It's so much more than about the movie. Had this movie been released as originally intended, it would have gone out just in movie theaters, in about 3,000 theaters, probably open with $20 to $25 million, and then at the appropriate time had its video window and been released then online. This was a totally switcheroo situation for the movie, and it was the result of this unusual and unprecedented situation. And Sony had to take what they had and try to make the best of it. And it worked out pretty well, though, considering the bottom line budget, production budget for the film, as reported, of around $40 million plus marketing costs, it would still have a long way to go to recoup all those expenses. But look, if awareness was currency, this movie's cash rich. I mean, the awareness was off the charts on this movie.
So what do you think Sony executives are kind of saying this morning as they look at what happened, what they did maybe wrong, maybe what they did right in the end? Who knows? I mean, did this just work out just fine for them in the end? What are they saying?
Well, I think they did I think Sony did the best with the situation they had. I mean, they were scrambling, and everyone was witness to this. But remember, when you're in that hot seat trying to figure out what to do in terms of how to release the movie, when to release the movie, or even if to release the movie at all, that's a lot of pressure. But I think there was just this overall feeling within the zeitgeist of North America, certainly, that you can't tell people what they can and cannot see. And when it became this forbidden fruit kind of thing, then suddenly people who would never have imagined being interested in a Seth Rogen, James Franco R-rated comedy were suddenly aware of this movie and wanted to see what the fuss was about. And that was important and really part of an organic marketing situation that just grew out of all this craziness over the past couple of weeks.
And the irony now is that this is now being talked about as maybe a test case for simultaneous video on demand and theater demand, not something that the theaters want to really talk about. But what happens now?
Yeah, well, I think we may be getting a little ahead of ourselves. I think people are jumping on this bandwagon of saying, is this the beginning of a new type of release pattern? I don't think so. This is a completely unique situation. Unless anyone think that you can just come along with another comedy and have it get this kind of exposure and create this kind of fervor and this amount of downloads in a single weekend, I think it's very misguided. The traditional release pattern is there for a reason. And in 2015, when we're expecting the biggest box office year ever in theaters, I don't think we're going to see the next Star Wars or Avengers or Fast and Furious or the next Pixar movie released in this way. They're just too expensive to produce and market nationwide and worldwide. Remember, the worldwide component is huge in theaters. Look at The Hobbit from Warner Brothers. It's nearly at $500 million, and it's only been out a little less than 2 weeks around the world. And so at Rentrak, we always look at the global picture. The brick and mortar theater very much alive. Certainly the online component it needs to be addressed in this situation, but is this signaling some sort of sea change in how films are released in the future? I don't think so.
So what are the brick and mortar theaters thinking at this point? Did they make a mistake, or given the situation, they would stand by their decisions?
Yeah, I think the bigger theater chains that decided not to show the movie, you have to respect the kind of pressures they're under with a physical threat to their theaters. If anything were to happen at the theater level in their theaters, that's a big liability, and it's easy to Monday morning quarterback and say, oh, they should have released the film, but I don't know. I think the situation happened the way it was supposed to. The independent theaters, the 331 some odd theaters that released it, the people who went there had a lot of fun, and it shows that going to the movie theater for a movie like this can be a happening. It's a big deal. It's a fun communal extravaganza, if you will, and for people to go out to the movie theater and sit there and express their right to see whatever content they like without being told what they can and cannot see. I think that manifested itself very strongly in people having a great time going out to see the interview in theaters. And
it became a big social media event. I mean, Seth Rogen was tweeting a lot, so that sort of played into the whole thing.
Well, the social media aspect is huge, and also the technology is huge, because if we were sitting here even 10 years ago, or maybe even just 5 years ago, to scramble and be able to put a movie that was originally going to be in theaters and have it on all these online platforms would have been virtually impossible. And if the technology was even there in past years, I mean, it wasn't there, I should say, in past years, it'd be impossible to have a release like this. So I think it's technology meets the culture, and you can't tell people what they can and cannot see because they went out and saw it, or they went to the virtual box office and watched it at home.
Paul Dergarabedian of Rentrak, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bobby. It was great to be here.
All right, I'm Bobby Rebell. This is Reuters.